You're listening to the Bombad Generals.
General? Oh.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Bombad Generals. I'm here with Seth and we've also got a special guest, LJ, or you might know him from the Discord, TalkPolite. Welcome, LJ.
Thank you guys for having me. It's great to be on.
Yeah, it's an honor to have the head judge for Worlds on.
Exactly. As you guys may know, we've got only the second ever Legion Worlds event coming up here at the end of March. As of March 26th, we will have a new Legion World Champion. So very exciting. LJ is head judge for Worlds, but this isn't your first rodeo when it comes to big events. So just a brief rundown of all the things that you've done so far. So you participated as a participant in the first Worlds in 2019.
Yep.
You were the first player to qualify for the second Worlds with the faction CIS.
Yep.
Correct.
And then that's you as a player. Yeah, did some other stuff, whatever. But as a tournaments guy, you've run 4 LVOs, which I think still hold the record for the biggest events in person in North America.
Yep.
You started Invader League, which is the biggest event anywhere as far as I know right now, happening online, still going strong today, even though you've taken a step back, but you're the OG there. And then most recently, people probably know you as one of the main rules guys on the AMG Legion forum.
That all tracks.
There you go. And then obviously you've done a lot for tournaments. You did Legion tournament circuit, I believe is under the banner of Team Relentless and all that good stuff. You kind of helped coordinate a gaggle of TOs. I think that was part of your work during the pandemic and during the slow time, was getting a lot of TOs together and then coordinating terrain and having some terrain that's going around from tournament to tournament. So a lot of the logistics stuff that's not really glorious, but really important to keeping things running.
Yeah, it keeps really the game alive.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that it's a bit of a science and also a lot of art, and there's a lot of techniques and things that we picked up from working with other TOs over the last couple of years that have really grown the events to the positive, awesome happenings that they are today.
Are you guys still looking for terrain for the stockpile? If people wanted to donate tables or whatnot, is there a place that
absolutely
they could reach out?
So we still collect terrain for the inventory, because even though we kind of hit our goal of where we wanted to be of 65 tables that travels to all of the frontline gaming events, we know that now when this inventory starts getting used more consistently, there's going to be wear and tear, and tables will need repair, replacement, and now that we've hit 65 tables, the next goal is 128 tables, so we can run 256 player events. So now that we've got that one notch in the belt, now it's time to aim for the next one. And we might not need that much space by the next time we run an LVO, but we want to be ready to always hit that next expansion and keep getting bigger and bigger. And so if you know of a frontline gaming event that happens to be close to you or are willing to ship it, there are people we can get you in contact with or places they can go so they can make it to frontline in Nevada, or they can be manually brought to one of the next events and then added to the inventory as it travels across the country. And that's one of the things that it actually convinced me to give some of my own stuff to it. And I absolutely love seeing pictures from an event across the country, and it's like, hey, that's that's a toy me and my brother hobbied up and is now living on a Legion table that's playing in Cherokee, which is something that happened this last weekend. So yeah, really, really cool to see it continue to grow and hopefully travel more and more throughout this year. And yeah, if there are people that are willing to continue to help that grow, definitely make sure you get in contact with me, because we'd love to have your help.
Super cool.
That's a cool feeling. And the other thing, I guess, too, you do have a separate Discord for Legion TOs as well, right?
Yeah, we have essentially it's like an LTC server, and the whole point of the server is like, hey, there's a channel with resources, both official and unofficial. There's channels to talk about terrain, about judging, about prize support, and so we've kind of collected a motley crew of TOs and knowledgeable people. And like Keegan for support of the of Game Uplink and their app. This kind of group where if you want to be able to talk tournaments and help grow your local event, that's something that I encourage you reach out to me, and we'll give you the invite for. There's no other requirement for coming in other than you want to grow tournaments, or maybe you make something or sell something that you want to see people give away as prize support at a tournament, or you make terrain and you want people to use your terrain at their tournaments. That's the whole point of that server. So it's really just a big, spider web. It's a network. It kind of helps people stay together and stay involved. And I think once we get past this Worlds and we potentially see the return of store level events across the country, that kind of RPQ style event, I believe is going to come back soon. I think the resource that this provides will be ready at the right time for these events to grow again and have a lot of really special local events on top of the really cool convention events that happen.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens with those kind of RPQ level things, right? Because last we had it was before, like, I guess technically we had a couple that were post Clone Wars release, but only by a little bit before the pandemic hit. Yeah. So, like Seth, you weren't even in the game, playing the game when the first RPQs were going out, right?
Maybe. I'm not.
Maybe.
No.
Well,
I don't know.
My point is, like, a lot of people have started playing, right? Like, I know, I've seen two communities since then. Like, I was in Calgary before the pandemic. It's doubled, at least in size. I'm now here in Vancouver, and it's just shooting up. Like, I feel like it's going to be really easy to hit 20, 30, 40 player RPQs, no problem. And it's going to be really cool to see. But for prospective TOs, that could be a bit of a nightmare if you're not used to that. So definitely.
We wanted to capture a lot of those, like, people that had never made the leap but could run an event and just give them, hey, here's a resource where you can look at or talk to other people and make your event the best that it can possibly be. And it was kind of cool because I think there are a lot of, like, local leaders that either popped up or became larger mid to convention level event leaders because of that system. And everybody gets better and the community gets better because of stuff like that. So it's almost never a downside to have a resource like that.
No, definitely not.
Not at all.
So let's pivot then, talking about just the little tournaments, the big little tournaments, to the biggest tournament of all, Worlds. As we mentioned, you are the head judge for that. So let's start things off with a judging question. What do you think you're going to be called to tables for most at Worlds? What do you think is something that people are getting wrong, that if we can tell them, hey, practice this, learn it, it's going to make your guys' life a lot easier?
I think one of the things that would make my life easier is if people just made sure they knew the anatomy of the rulebook itself. It is built and structured differently than it was as an RRG. And so to have that player familiarity where we can talk about something and everybody knows where I'm referencing this thing is going to be big, because when a judge goes, hey, I found this thing here, there are a lot of those rulings that players are going to remember and they're going to look up later, and then we know we're all speaking off the same sheet of music, and it's not something they just made up off the top of their head. As far as a specific rule in general, I think that calculating cover for our speeder bike units, those are ones that people are still talking about and figuring out, what that looks like and imagining that in their head. I think even though calculating cover might seem easier because a lot of things just get cover now, there were still a lot of cover determinations that I had to make at LVO when I'd walk by a table, somebody call for a judge, or if you were 5280 variety, consular would come out of nowhere. And, I would still have to grab the line laser, put it down just to make sure it did or didn't cross a piece of terrain. And so I think the discussion around terrain and cover is probably going to occupy most of my time. And I think if the players, like I said, they're knowledgeable with the anatomy of the rulebook, and more importantly, I think they continue to have really good turn zero discussion where terrain is nominated appropriately as by the rules, that will save a lot of headache, because those were the things where, it's my job to be in that awkward spot and make that call, but we can save that pain for everybody. If you've talked like, hey, is this piece of scatter difficult for troopers or not? I'm going to make my call on what I should believe, and you want to take care of it before I have to even get involved. And so I think that'll really help, because I believe I'll get a lot of judge calls where it'll be like, hey, we didn't talk about this piece of terrain, what is it? And I'm like, okay, let's walk through some basic steps and figure out an agreeable solution for both parties.
Yeah,
that's something I always find I'm catching myself, especially people who are kind of really used to playing on TTS under the old rules. Like, a lot of stuff is just, it's right there. The tooltip will tell you how to treat the terrain, and you're just to kind of get going, get playing. But then you're playing with the new rules, and you're like, wait a second, we didn't discuss
impassable.
What's impassable, what's not. And I think, what I'm going to try to do at the very least is really know my own list and the things I need to bring up for that list, right? So if you've got a saber tank in your list, or like a big vehicle, be ready to say, hey, what can give cover to the saber tank, right? Because people are going to be nervous, they're going to be thinking about the game. So the more that you just know your own stuff so that you can make sure nothing gets missed, means that something's not going to bite you in the butt. So I really like what you were saying as well about like knowing the anatomy of the CRB, because like I don't. I'm so used to this to the RRG, and it works well for how my brain works. So that's something I'll be doing over the next month, probably doing another read through just to get the structure down.
Yeah, I think that'll be important, and it goes a little hand in hand in it, but I also recommend people just know how to navigate that rules forum. We've been blessed with a system where it's a little easier to push those updates, and I'm fairly certain we'll see another small one before Worlds just to fix a couple more inconsistencies. Nothing that I think would change the way that you play the game, but the kind of thing where it's like, hey, this is the way it's meant to be played, so now the wording has been changed so it actually plays that way. And just be familiar with that rulebook change log that will be updated the next time that happens. And, I like to say this every time I jump on anybody's cast: know how to, on your phone, press search, go to search by tags, and then search by the tag related to the thing you're looking up. Because as I liked to joke, there was one time that somebody was trying to look up something related to ties, and they got 1,000 results related to X-Wing. Because of the TIE fighter, instead of searching by tag TIE and finding the 2 results they were looking for that had to do with, a TIE game. So that's something too that I think will help people a lot, is just be familiar with both those entities, because those are the rules that govern your event. And make sure you know the event packet. That's one of those things that is always something I harp upon as an organizer, and I'll harp on as the head judge, head consular, is that you should be intimately familiar with that packet, because that is like the final word on the schedule. And with so many people coming from all over the world, you need a common sheets of music that you can work off of, and just not messing that up when you've got people that are jet lagged and they've come from all over the place and they're tired because they just played 3-4 games of Legion in a row. That is critical, and it's one of the lost arts, or maybe not lost arts, but maybe one of the things that's underappreciated when it comes to event running.
Yeah, you don't. You want to know that inside and out. You don't want to be finding out on Saturday that, oh, I have to play a 4th game now. I thought it was going to be 3 games on Sunday. Like that, you want to be pacing yourself for sure.
Yeah,
and that's a very specific example to bring up. Why ever would you bring that up?
Why would I bring that up? Oh, last year was 4 rounds, but we knew that going in.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping to play 4 rounds on Saturday as
Hopefully.
well. That's the plan. That's the plan. Whether it works out or not, we'll see.
Now, hopefully this isn't news to anybody that's listening, but if you are going to Worlds and it is, we can't actually go as late as we would like on Sunday. So if you make it to the top 8 on Saturday, you're going to play what we call a shadow round, where we cut and only the top 8 play 1 more round, so that we have a top 4 on Sunday and we can get out of there before the hall closes. And we are going to provide dinner for those people that play that 4th round, so they don't have to worry about it.
Which, from what I heard, is Portillo's, right?
That's what John wants to do.
All right.
And John's the local, so
that's my motivation right there.
Yeah, we're gonna go with what he wants to do because trust the locals when it comes to food always.
Always.
Seth is a former Chicago guy. I am told.
Oh.
He claims.
I am. Yes.
I don't know. He might have been making it up. I'm not sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
Anything you want to mention about proxies or anything like that? I think usually people are pretty used to maybe having things a bit looser when it comes to those, but obviously this is Worlds. It's an AMG run event. Anything you want to highlight on that side when it comes to what models you can swap in and out or proxy this for another thing, especially since we're going to have at least one release, Ventress, very close to the event itself.
Yeah. So that's actually, I guess I'll work backwards because of that question. One of the things that, it hasn't been a rule for, I want to say like 3 years now. There is no 11-day rule anymore for new miniature releases. If the miniature is available, in North America, it is legal at use for an event. And so she's releasing pretty close, a week, less than a week. It's tight, but enough time for people to turn around and be able to use her at the event if they so choose. And so that's, number one to remember is, hey, anything that's released in the US, I think the packet does say North America. Anything that's in North America by the time the event starts, and consider Last Chance Qualifier and the actual World Championship to be separate events, because they are. They are legal for said event. And so when you're bringing your miniatures and when you're considering what you're going to do, at the end of the day, you consult 2 things. You consult the Galactic Conquest event rules, and you talk to the TO, because John is going to be the final arbitrator, and that's the event organizer is John Griffin. And if I say John, I'm probably talking about him from now on. He is the one that's making all miniature calls, because he's kind of been the one interfacing. Surprisingly, he's been interfacing more with AMG than I have, because what I am involved in is very different than what he's been involved in. And so if you ever have a question, I would shoot it to him, because he's going to be the final approval. What I will go off of and what I'm going to tell people is that, just make sure you're following the rules that are in the GC event document, which is that the miniature needs to be easily identifiable as the version of the unit it represents. And that's important for stuff like Wookiees, or miniatures that have had multiple releases like Darth Vader. If you're going to bring Commander Vader, you should bring Commander Vader. But Commander Vader also has the stipulation of, if you bring the special Commander Vader from Star Wars Celebration Chicago, which is ironic in that way, that would also be legal, because that's the cards he came with, was Commander Vader. Whereas Operative Vader, although a lot of people consider him to be the cooler looking version of Vader, is only usable as Operative Vader. And that's like a big one that we've gone back and forth on over the years, and we've had a lot of input from developers on, that rule number 2 in the miniature section, or rule number 3, I should say, it should be that miniature. Wookiees come up a lot. you should not try to use a unit of shooty Wookiees as melee Wookiees. That's enough to cause significant confusion when you're talking about, you're on game 11 after a full weekend, of Legion. It's one of those things where, when you look at it right now, just us talking, it's like, oh, those are easily identifiable, or I could make that split call, but it's another variable that we want to take out of the equation in total. So, it's a little more restrictive than I think, your local events or your game nights are going to be, but you will basically have to have the thing that it is at Worlds. And the same thing goes for your cards, the same thing goes for your tokens. You can customize, I think, almost more than you could before in the token department. You have to have cards, but you could use custom tokens. That is allowable per the Galactic Conquest event rules. There are essential tokens, and they have specific sizes and ways that they should look, but non-essential tokens and it specifically says they're used to track suppression, wounds, aims, dodges, those can be switched out. So there is some of the customization element to this that is still in there, which I think is nice. That kind of old rule of, the base of the miniature has to be official plastic, but you can do whatever you want when you add on to that and whatnot, that is there as well. So a lot of player customization is still in the document and will be perfectly, allowable. But, I think a lot of straight replacements, like, hey, I want to use, an HK droid instead of IG-88, that probably would not fly at a Worlds level event. And that's the same thing that they told us 4 years ago when I went to the first Worlds. They were very serious about no proxies. Everything needs to be painted to a minimum standard, and if you have your own custom tokens and stuff, if you're on the stream, it should not be like easily identifiable on stream. So that's another one too, because a lot of us have custom tokens and order tokens and stuff like that. They want those, at least as far as the stream tables are concerned, to be very neutral and maybe not super obvious, so we don't get any trouble with any sort of licensing, marketing type individual. So that's actually something that, we will probably help out with as organizers, but I recommend that people bring maybe a set of cardboard tokens, or if you have something that's not super branded, maybe you can bring that as a backup in case you are on one of the stream tables. There's a very small number of streaming tables that are going to happen. David could probably confirm exactly how many, but we've never done more than 2, because doing that is the definition of insanity. And so, really that kind of spotlight is going to be on a very small amount of people throughout the weekend, because if David's streaming 3 games on Thursday, 3 games on Friday, 4 games on Saturday, that's 10, 13 games, 12 games throughout the weekend. He's streaming 12 or less games throughout the weekend. So that means there's going to be 24 people on stream out of the, 150 people we'll probably see over the weekend. Very small amount. So that's a long way of saying that check the GC rules. They are pretty clear. Don't get too hung up on the wording, because it's probably not going to matter for the majority of people's stuff anyway. And also, don't worry about, it says like no proxies of any cards are allowed. If it's a print and play, that's not a proxy. Yeah. It was literally distributed for print and play, so print and play with it, because I've been getting that question a bunch. That's one of those like Facebook boogeymen that's come up where it's like, is this going to be illegal at official events? No, they literally made it for print to play. You'll be fine. Yes. And one of the other things, go ahead.
Yeah, just specifically that's in reference to the Battle Force command cards. Like if you're bringing Blizzard, you can, at your printer at home, print off all of the Blizzard command cards you want and run them. Yeah. That's what it's made for.
I will say from a gameplay perspective, because this is something that'll probably fall more in my realm as consular, is 0.5 under miniatures is the size or pose of a customized miniature cannot interfere with gameplay. So that's one of those things too, that if you have something that you think might interfere with gameplay, you want to escalate that now, so John has it, can put it in a little folder, and we have a, yes, these things have already been pre-approved, just in case somebody sees it and they're like, well, I'm not sure if that's legal or not. You always want that decision to be back on us and not between you guys by the time you finally get to the table.
Yeah. I think the big thing, miniatures, if you're not using anything except like the exact miniature that came in the box, like, just never hurts to reach out to John and say, hey, is this okay? Yep. Because yes, it's going to be more strict, and some people might not like that, but at the end of the day, it's Worlds.
Yeah.
And these are going to be tired players, and for the most part, very, very experienced players who they look at a unit and they know what to expect from a glance. And if it's not what it normally is, that actually does mess with their minds.
Yeah, and it does help from a judging perspective too, because I, as a casual observer of, 64 games happening at the same time, I want to be able to make game state decisions or determinations rather without having to bug you, so you can just focus on playing the game. If I ask you a question and you're in the middle of the game, a lot of players' perceptions can automatically go to the negative because they think I'm asking a question because, oh, did I do something wrong? Is that why you're asking me a question? Like, it helps for me to be able to make those game state calls without having to ask you a question, and things modeled, the correct way within the usual Legion standards. That's, that really does help me. There are certain things that have always been legal, like, using different weapons on ATRTs or spider droids because you have the upgrade card. That's all you need. But that's also why we display that information in front of us on the table. So again, I can make those quick viewings without having to bug you, which at the end of the day is, best on everybody.
Yeah. Similarly, I believe under the old rules, it did state tokens had to be next to the unit on the battlefield. Has that changed, or is that still the same?
I don't believe that has changed. I think it's all still by the unit on the battlefield. As far as I can tell, I don't think any of that has changed, but I don't know if that specific verbiage has made it in anywhere. I think it's just the way that the rules are worded. It always speaks of the table and putting it on the board or whatever. And so I think it's just one of those assumed things. I'm comfortable enough if you make that call between yourself and the opponent accepting that, but I think it feeds into exactly what we were talking about. If the stuff is by the units and things are, where I, as a player who knows the game, can look at it and know the game state without having to ask a question, it's just going to make everybody's lives easier.
Yeah, especially a similar thing. People are tired. People are trying to know the game state at a glance, and you're trying to stay on top of the proper game state, right? Like, it happens to everyone. We forget a suppression, or maybe you are thinking about one thing and you forget to put a wound on a character, right? It's a lot easier if it's right in front of you. You can both see it than if you put it on your cards. Like, that's just, I bring it up because it's a big pet peeve of mine, but something to be aware of as people are prepping for Worlds. Like,
no, that's something I wish that, like, I actually have not really a gripe, but I guess I have personal feelings on that, because this last weekend I was very lucky enough to play 2 events this last weekend. I played a 3-round MCP event at a local store, and I played a 3-round skirmish event at a local store. And, playing the 2 games fairly consistently, it never really dawned on me how critical having that key information by my miniatures on the board was to my decision-making process, because, with MCP, it's kosher to put your power and your wounds on the card. They don't really follow the units around, especially because that game is very movement pushing focused. There's a lot more of it, so it would be a lot more burdensome even though you only have a couple of units on the board compared to a game of Legion. So like, it really did underscore that importance to me, just to see I can make these decisions quicker because I didn't have to ask you as much information, because it's hard to see what's on your cards on the other side of the board. And, as a player, my eyes are usually looking at you because we're having a conversation or assessing the board state. And, to be frank, not at your crotch where your cards are located as you're standing across the table. I have a very good story from my first LVO about a doubles team that wore banana hammocks to distract their opponents as they were fighting them. So, just generally as a thing not to be rude, I'm always focused on the game state in front of me, and I think that goes a long way to helping out with that.
Yeah, for sure. Good to hear I'm not alone and I'm not just some prudish tryhard or something. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. And so
go ahead, Seth.
Oh, I was just gonna move on to the next question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, speaking of like a favorite, like a memorable moment, just like the banana heads. Gonna get a little lighthearted here. What are what's like one of your favorite memorable judge call that you have done? Whether it be your favorite or the most hated, like something that you just remember and you despise, or like you remember and just like, man, this was a really cool situation.
I was gonna say, if it's one I've despised, I've probably repressed it at this point. Like it's probably dug so deep that I'm not gonna remember it anymore.
It's just drama down there.
No, gosh, there's got to be something that I can dig deep and find. I think, I don't know. I feel like it all is. It's also like easy. There's so much that is not difficult or like memorable because a lot of stuff are just, hey, we think this is how we remember it works. Does it work this way? Yeah, move on. I mean, there's definitely been like a lot of weird ones. There have been, there was a moment in the first Adepticon I was at where I was playing, but I was also kind of helping, where, people wanted to check how deflect worked, and it was like, yep, that's how deflect worked, and it was like, cool, Luke just deflected 3 wounds back onto Boba Fett and killed him. And I was like, nice. So like, it was like, and we were all kind of like, wow, that's awesome. I've never seen that before. Even the person who it happened to. So like, there's definitely a lot of things where I think people just kind of already know how it worked, but because of fatigue, they want like a second opinion. Probably, I think a lot of the quote-unquote worst ones have been like having to make like that cover call, and it's like, yeah, that unit's in the open, buddy. Like those are ones where, and even in today's, frequent covery world, it still happens, and we had a situation come up at skirmish this weekend where it was like, oh yeah, that unit just got caught out by a fleet shotgun unit. Have fun. I think actually I do have a funny one. I was playing in it, but I helped with a couple judge calls so the TO didn't have to worry about it, where somebody did the change of plans on Bane's 3-pip after it had been divulged, which is like the best of both worlds. And he was a new player, so he didn't realize it. And it was really funny because, again, it wasn't a moment where he felt like, oh, I'm dumb, I'm caught out. He was like, oh, you can do that? And his opponent was like, thank you for giving me my card back. And he's like, I'm just glad I could be a homie. So that was another example of like a funny one that people, probably don't think about, is like, does he get the card back? Yes, he gets the card back, and he got to put his tokens out. Great. But, the player like learned something from it, was extremely positive about it. So all good things for the most part.
Yeah. The good thing about Worlds, I guess, is that speaking of positivity, I think the Legion community is pretty good. You're not going to get too many people salty about bad calls, but as head judge, there's no more appeals when it gets to you, right? You make the judge call and it is final, correct?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, like, look, who else are you going to ask?
Yeah. So, like, you know what? If you like it or not, you say thank you very much, Judge, and move on.
Shake their hand.
Yeah, well, and that is something that I do. I will hopefully remember to say this during the player comments at Adepticon when we're at LCQ and at Worlds. But that very much goes into my personal philosophy when I run a staff and judging staffs. Is look, guys, my judges are there to keep things moving. they are not there to be right 100% of the time. It's a bonus if they are, and we pick people because they're competent. We don't pick them because, we go out in the street and give out vouchers to go help at this tournament. We pick people that we know already are very good at this job. But at the end of the day, I will constantly remind people that your job as a judge is to keep the game state moving. We can stop time, we can look stuff up, we can dig really deep into the weeds and give you that 2-minute extension or whatever to help make up for the time. But, we need to keep things moving because at the end of the day, we're all on a schedule. And so I want to remind people of that fact, is that while the judges will do their best to get it right, and I guarantee they're going to get pretty much everything right, don't be that person that goes back at the end of the event and gets all huffy and puffy because a ruling was incorrect. That is why there is an appeal process, because we're humans and we make mistakes. But I also don't want that to be the crux of why I lost Worlds, because that gets away from the 90 other decisions you made leading up to that moment that also affected the game state. There's no such thing as a perfect game of Legion, and nothing underscores that for me more than, hearkening back to the first Worlds when Kingsley and Luke, two very well-known, very competent players, set up range 3 away from each other on Long March because both of them somehow mismeasured their deployment zones.
There you go.
That's a thing that happened in the first Worlds.
Okay, I get it.
And, one of them ended up being the forever champion.
We all know that judge calls isn't what loses you Worlds. It's a couple bad dice rolls is what's going to cost me Worlds personally.
You're not a bad player.
Nothing
you
to
have
do
bad
with
dice.
me. No. Not me or my list building or any of the decisions. It's just
Blame the
dice.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have the confidence that the crew that's actually assembled, they're going to do the best job that they can, and they're picked because they're all competent and knowledgeable on the rules. But, the flip side of that is our life is a lot easier because we're judging for the Legion community. Telling more old stories and, things around the fire pit. That first Adepticon in 2019, I still remember to this day 2 players that in the middle of their final turn with, whoever wins gets that invite to the last chance, or from the last chance qualifier to high command, stopped to explain the game to 2 people that walked by and were asking what was going on at this tournament. They full stopped their game to explain to these people kindly and excellently what was happening in their game of Star Wars Legion, smiled, shook their hands, and then finished the game. And I'll never forget that. And that's the kind of community we have.
It's pretty cool.
People like Star Wars.
Star Wars is pretty great.
People do like Star Wars.
Is pretty great. We've talked a lot about the nitty-gritty. What is something, LJ, that you're looking forward to that you feel is going to set Worlds apart from your normal, every month we've got a big tournament going on. What's something that's going to make Worlds special for you?
I think probably the AMG representation is going to be pretty big at this one. I think a lot of the people that you've seen on stream over the last couple of years are going to make physical appearances. You'll probably get to see some people that you might have not wanted to see before. It's like, oh, I've never wanted to see Dallas, but man, I've met him and now I feel like he would probably win in a back alley fight. That's how I felt after meeting him at Celebration. So, I think there's it'll be cool to see a lot of the people that develop and make the games that we like to play, because we've done a lot of things out, not in person. We've done a lot of things online and we've seen a lot of streams, and to have, the community of competitive players all in one place, or at least a good chunk of them, and to be at this high level event and to just be totally immersed in that tournament environment with the people that make the game, is in itself kind of its own experience that I think is very unique and is not something you get at, you know, a standard event and even a lot of these convention level events. Adepticon for me was truly just like a mecca of, you know, a thing that I wanted to go to and had never been able to go to before that first event. And so, you know, if you've never been, it definitely feels like it feels big, and it is big. Huge vendor hall, so many games going on. You'll walk around and be like, man, I did not know this game had a community. I did not know they ran tournaments for this game. And, you know, you'll see things like that will, I think, you know, maybe not amaze you, but it will definitely wow you. And, you know, you're going to get to see and probably hopefully do demos for all sorts of games. Obviously, Shatterpoint will be one of the big ones that our community, I think, will want to check out. But, you know, there are a lot of others that will pop up and that aren't AMG or Star Wars related. And it really does feel like a bit of a spectacle on top of that top tier competitive event that you're expecting to enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the very first tournament I got to go to was LVO 2020, and just like Luke, or no, not Luke. It was Alex Davey was there, and that was just like, this is really cool and feels pretty special and different. Like, just having those people, I like that answer a lot. But also the big streaming stages. It just makes you feel like the game you're playing is a big deal. You walk in and you see like the streaming setups going on.
I'm interested to see exactly how the layout of that ends up this time, because I know David was talking about how that giant stage, while cool, was moderately inconvenient, is my understanding. But there's definitely, there's like a grandeur to that you don't necessarily get elsewhere, which is always super neat. And I think all of the games are going to be streamed by somebody, and we're all in the same big area. X-Wing, Armada, Legion, Marvel Crisis Protocol, and I assume the Shatterpoint demos, we're all in the same hall together. And so, you know, if you were at LVO and you saw like what that hall was like, it's going to be bigger than that, because there's going to be even more people playing, and it is going to be insane having all of these world championships together in the same hall, because, you know, Adepticon is not the world champs for a lot of game systems. It's just another big event for a lot of game systems. It's like the grand champs of painting for 40K, because that's Golden Demon territory, and for the AMG stuff, it's really become you know your big end of the year event, or end of season event, I should say, because obviously it's in March. So yeah, I think there's, for our corner of the community, it really is a special occasion. Awesome.
I think that's what more can you say after that?
Yeah, like, it's great. Great.
If you're not hyped for it, get hyped now.
Yeah, get hyped. Oh, and you know, actually, I really can't forget to mention too, the international presence is really big at Adepticon too. Yeah. We were very lucky to have, you know, people come from over the border. Obviously, you know, yourself, Matt, and, you know, Dave Grant came from the UK, and they're, you know, not the only two, obviously, but, you know, there are a lot of international folks that are going to be making appearances at Adepticon, and that was one of the things that I got to do at my first Adepticon, was play one of the Aussie guys, Luke, who did they were the Armada podcast, but they all started doing the Legion stuff.
Master of the Force, Luke.
Yeah,
that one?
I got to play him at my first Adepticon. It was him and I that we were battling for the invite at Last Chance Qualifier. So I knocked him out.
Nice.
That is the thing. The first Worlds, just by the structure of it was very tough for international people to make it, because it was kind of like there's a few tournaments feeding into one another. So and obviously it ended up with a top 8 all from the US, as far as I'm aware. So like, yeah, having a Worlds that actually feels like a Worlds is going to be really, really cool.
Yeah, I think this one will feel more like a Worlds for sure than the last one did. Absolutely.
I actually wouldn't be
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, international to North America took home the W, because, there are certain things in other metas that, we're not ready for. I think. So, we'll see.
We'll see. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, LJ.
Yeah, thank you, LJ.
Absolutely,
we'll
guys.
see you again.
I'm looking forward to it. I hope that people are getting hyped. There's really not much to do right now except just kind of get ready. We know that there's not going to be a major, points errata update before Worlds. AMG made that clear, which I think made everybody's planning a lot easier, because they know what's going to be out there by the time we get to Worlds. So that was good. And like I hinted at, I wouldn't be surprised if there was another small wording update in the RRG, or the CRB. But the board is set, the pieces are moving. We'll have a packet update out here in the next week or two with the game uplink link, because we are game uplink has been blessed off, so we are officially going to use that for LCQ and Worlds. And just be prepared in the next week or two to hopefully hear a lot more information on when your lists are due, and all that last minute coordination required before we roll dice.
It'll be here before we know it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Less than a month.
There we go. Well, get ready for it, people. Read that rule book. Join that TO Discord if you're looking to run your own local events. Make terrain for the boxes so we can have those 250 6-player tournaments, all that good stuff. So keep it up and stay Gungan.
This has been the Bombad Generals.
Listening to Bombad Generals is not scientifically proven to make you a better Legion player. Side effects may include bad dice rolls, missed triggers, aim losses, bankruptcy, divorce, vomiting, and sudden death. Ask your doctor if Bombad Generals is right for you.